Travis Parry, I'm so glad to have you here. How are you doing today?
Doing excellent. Thank you, Jenny, for having me on. This is awesome.
I am really excited to dig in with Balance Man, right?
That's right. Don't forget it.
All right. I love it. I love it. Okay. So as you know, this season is all about the messy middle. So we're going to start at the beginning. So tell me about the inciting event in your story, the moment where everything changed and you started to get into this loop with figuring out how do I change my relationship with work?
So, my father and I had a fantastic relationship. He was 49 years old. We did a lot together. I was his oldest son, and he passed away very suddenly, a heart attack on a mountain bike ride. He had a friend with him who was an EMT, a licensed EMT, who worked on him for 30 minutes before the Life Flight helicopter even arrived. I interviewed him. Tom is a dear friend of the family. He did such a fantastic job. Reality was none of us were expecting this. We were actually planning a 50th birthday party just 2 weeks later. And
Mm.
so instead of getting everybody together, family, friends, community, which my dad was a business owner and he was loved in the community, very loved in the community. We all gathered for his funeral.
Ah.
And I was a financial advisor. I was ripe old age of 26. I was
Mm.
tasked with doing all the financial stuff, helping my mom, figuring out the life insurance, the death benefit, how to pay off her home, her cars, move her to different location. Like all of it was on my shoulders.
Mm.
And that was rough for a 26-year-old, you know, kid who, yeah, I was studying this. I was learning on the beginnings of how to help people long term in retirement and things, but I didn't expect that to happen to my own father right then. And so dealing with the emotions, dealing with everything, I wrote my dad's obituary. And in that process, I wasn't expecting to do this. My sister should have done it. She wasn't in town. She was flying in from Washington. So there I was stuck with doing this. And I was writing a talk for the funeral. It all just kind of hit me at that moment. Dad was able to become the person that he wanted to become. And I had this come to Jesus moment where I realized I wasn't where I needed to be. And part of that was I wanted to be like my dad. I wanted to have great balance and be there for my kids and coach their games and do all the things that a great family man would do. But I got caught up in the providing for that family. I got caught up in, well, I maybe just need to be more productive or tips and tricks and hacks. And I just thought I was something more special than the average person and I would just figure it out. So I ended up becoming this do it all that really isn't a traditional, you know, workaholic, but was. I just kind of got
Mhm.
caught in what I call the workaholic trap. And that's when I realized that, oh my goodness, what if I only make it to 49? I'm halfway, I'm more than halfway there. What if
Mhm.
I don't make it to 50? Am I on track to doing the things that I need to be doing to becoming the person that I want to become? And that honestly changed the course of the rest of my life to start making change and becoming balanced man to help others make the, changes into their balance and moving forward out of that workaholic trap.
So, first of all, honoring how difficult it can be to lose someone that young. But it's amazing to me that in that moment, what you saw as a man who lived a full life in his 50 years of life. That's what I'm hearing. And really starting to question, am I living as full of a life that no matter when I die, I know it's exactly what it needs to look like?
Yep. That's it.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
Yeah. It was totally unexpected. In fact, for days, I just, you're in these stages of grief and they don't all come in the form that they say in the textbook, but it was sort of
Yeah.
like, I was probably denying the fact that my dad was even dead for several weeks. It was a really weird thing. I was there at the mortuary to prepare his body for burial. I saw the casket go in the ground. Like we did all of the things that would help one to really believe it. It was just such an absolute surprise.
Yeah.
Someone that deals with somebody going through cancer, for example,
Mhm.
they may have a a few months to a few years, and they go through these processes much slower over time. But when it happens that fast and you get a phone call that dad died, you're just like, what? It totally floors you, and at least did for me. And because my dad was very healthy and he wasn't a couch potato. In fact, they did the autopsies called the widowmaker, where one of the arteries was 90% clogged. The other arteries were just fine. So it's not like you couldn't pick this up on blood pressure tests or, normal going to the doctor, which he did. Normally, the first sign is heart attack or death.
Oh, that's tough. That's tough. So
Yeah,
you were in this moment, you were in denial a little bit, which is totally natural.
very natural.
There's so much logistics. People just don't like, it's hard right after because there's all these things that have to be done when you're not in a space where you want to do those things. But in through those things, you kind of got a mirror into your own life. How did you move from seeing that mirror to turning it into something that you could do differently?
So the stages of change, we're not going to get deep into this, but psychologists have found when people want to change from an addiction, the first step is just realizing that you have the addiction, that you're in an addictive state or habit. And I think that was the wake up call. That was like, dude, you're here, even though you didn't want to be here. And the irony is I chose a profession. I wanted to be a business owner. So I'd avoid that completely. But I was naive and didn't have the systems, the processes in place that I do now. And so I realized I needed to get some help. And I started with consulting help. I started with getting some coaches, going to trainings. Then I started reading books. I did all the things that kind of the self-helpy things to do. And it got to a point where I needed to involve my wife. I even involved my church leaders who were there to help support me, because I realized that this addiction for so long had then made me not very able to cope with stress very well. And that stress coping mechanism, a lot of people self-medicate. I won't go into all that, but
Mhm.
we're human. Take your pick. There's vices out there that we choose to self-medicate with. And that became my stress outlet. And I realized, oh my goodness, I need to better deal with my stress and cope with that. It
Mhm.
came from the fact that I wasn't living the balanced lifestyle and I was stuck in this trap. And so, with a lot of help, was I able to finally make it through several phases. I call it do it all, where you're doing everything all at the same time, multitasking throughout your day. Being a productive workaholic, like, oh, okay, I need to be more productive. And I started getting training on that, to eventually becoming a personal developer, where I was so focused on myself and learning and growing. But if you want to really get out of an addiction, you have to climb all the way out with supportive friends, family, mentors, coaches, church leadership, etc., that are all going to surround you, and a society that's okay with not being a workaholic, which we're
Mhm.
so struggling with that.
Oh yeah, we
It's
are.
absolutely a badge of honor. You and I
Yeah.
both working on that, right? But
Yes.
so I'd say all of those pieces started to align, and it took several years. This was not an overnight success. This is a several year process. And I was finally able to write a book about it, and, it called
Mhm.
Achieving Balance. And that really resonates with business owners about, wow, balance is possible. And I actually have a system for it.
Nice. And we'll talk about that system shortly, but I want to dig first into that first couple of years. So you said it was a couple year journey. We all know that hindsight's 2020, journeys look very linear and beautiful. Let's talk
Right.
about how not beautiful and not linear it was. So you really talked about two things. One is realizing that stress was one of your triggers that was kind of spiraling down. How did you go through the process of looking at, I would like something to change? What were the steps you went through to then say, oh, I'm being triggered by all the stress in my life and it's keeping me
Mm.
from getting to where I want to go?
I think once I was able to feel my body again, and like
Ah,
literally,
yep.
I kid you not, it was 2 weeks where my wife just felt like, you haven't given me a hug in 2 weeks. Like I just was numb. I didn't have feeling. And it sounds crazy to, most people out there that haven't been through this experience, but I was there at my home for 2 weeks helping my mom just get everything. in place. I ended up coming back again for 2 more months, just helping with everything, the estate, everything that needed to be done, and getting everything organized for her. That was my coping mechanism at first, was helping mom, like feeling a sense of purpose of helping her. And
Mhm.
then when I got back into my normal state, when we got back home, I was back in my job, I realized that this was not my purpose. Financial planning, I love financial planners. I help them. They're one of my best clients. They're my ideal clients. I love them because they need what I have. And I was stuck because of that industry. There are lots of other industries we help too, but I felt stuck, and I got back into that mode where it's like, wow, here I am again. Nothing's going to change if I don't change literally everything. So the first thing that we ended up changing was our financial situation. Financial stress is ginormous on people. And I think for business owners, the financial stress is real. You don't do well enough, there's financial stress for sales. You do too well, there's financial stress for taxes and planning and estates. And it's just stressful. And
Mhm.
there I was helping client after client every day, seeing their financial stress, going, I want to help them so they don't end up like my dad, who I know dealt with a lot of financial stress. So he was a balanced guy who really made time for his family. Don't get me wrong. But I think internally, he didn't cope with the stress very well of his financial situations of
Mhm.
being a business owner. And they were successful. And there are times when they weren't successful. And there were times where my dad actually was, he had a broken neck and was disabled for a while. He wasn't able to work. It was really stressful on him and the family. So that's when I started to realize, well, all this financial stress stuff. So my wife and I, we wanted to be the poster children of the debt-free, millionaire next door type of people. And I also had this pull to help my clients figure out their financial stress. So I went deeper as a financial planner, and I got a master's in psychology to understand where's the stress coming from and how to cope with it. And then I started teaching psychology at a junior college, at a local college, and really enjoyed it. I
Mhm.
enjoyed it so much that I wanted to become more of a speaker on stage and really share that message with other audiences. And, I was told, well, you need a PhD and you need to write a book. And so I began that journey. And that led me to basically more and more education to try to figure out these components. The PhD was focused on couples and financial stress.
Yeah.
And we delve deep into that. And I honestly believe that workaholism is a financial derived addiction. A lot of business owners, at least ones I've studied and worked with, we've interviewed over almost 1,000 now for my book, Achieving Balance and Balanced Growth. And when we're rolling out, they have told us that, yes, they love their job, but there's also this financial component of they're paid really well, and it keeps them kind of being, unable to detach, going on vacations, even if they're doing fantastic. It's just this pull that the financial component brings.
Yeah, yeah, and that financial component bleeds throughout both not only business owners, but also individual workers, like the number of people that are scared to quit their job because they're at a certain level of income generation and they're afraid to lose that. So there's a stability component that keeps them working in unhappy jobs.
For sure.
So yeah, that makes complete sense. And that is like, it's the two things I've found as I've talked to business owners, financial and then performance. So some level of, I want to achieve so that I
Yep.
feel included, loved, like I matter, all of
Yeah.
those like deeper kind of needs. So let's go back to the basic. Because what I love
Yeah.
about what you did is you started at the bottom of the, the physiological, the actual, like we need money and we need health. Like it
Yeah.
starts at the bottom with our bodies and with our money. So how did you solve, or how that particular stressor, how did you find balance with that particular stressor?
With the health component, is that what you're saying?
Well, let's start with finance because that was the
Yeah.
one that
Okay.
was
Yeah.
first on your list. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually went through Dave Ramsey's program, bought his book, went through it. And here I am, a financial planner, trying to tell people what to do with their long term money. But most people don't understand. Financial planners aren't taught normally how to budget,
Mm.
how to deal with finances. In fact, a lot of financial planners that I know that get started, they're not in a great financial situation because they take on high debt and they're taking lots of risk. So I started learning on my own. My wife and I really got involved, and I eventually was able to become a financial counselor and financial coach. So I kind of switched my role from financial planning long term with investments and estate planning and all the things that are important to have. And I saw
Mhm.
that with my dad, especially, to, well, let's figure out how we can prevent and help people who aren't maybe in a position where they have millions of dollars, and that, they're the struggling couples, middle class, lower middle class, who haven't made it yet. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so my psychology degree really helped me to then apply what I learned in financial counseling and financial planning to coaching couples with money. And I helped them begin to realize, well, what are they stressing with individually? How are they dealing with money? What are their relationships with money? Where did they get that from? Their parents, their grandparents, their family, their experiences, and how they can communicate about money as a topic. Because we know that money is touted as the number one reason why people get divorced. And so I really created a program there, my own program of, hodgepodge, this and the other. And I started testing it out. And that's what led me to go, well, let's test this out at a PhD level. Let's find out, is what I created academically sound? Or am I adding to, the list of names out there of people who think they figured it out, and of, maybe this is causing harm, right? Maybe this is actually
Mhm.
doing worse for other people. And what I found in my PhD is I needed to tweak a few things. I needed to
Mhm.
really focus on the shared value components of couples. And the shared values of finance were super important. But what was even more important? Parenting. Parenting actually was number one.
Mhm.
And so as we parent, are we on the same teams? Are we on the same level with each other? And what we found is that when couples are on the same level, parenting wise, values wise, they actually are happier psychologically and less stressed. They are happier as a married couple or partnership. Well, I studied married couples, so we didn't know cohabiting couples in this study, but so, stronger marriage. And then third was they were financially more stable if they had these shared values. So I shifted my focus to less like budgeting and counseling to what's at the core of all of this. And the core really are those values that they share together.
Okay. And I definitely want to dive into that component about families and the importance and how to harness. But I want to go back to your story. So,
Yeah.
what you talked about is a great amount of research you've done. But in that moment, when you recognize that financial stressors were your trigger,
Yes.
how did you create balance? So, like you said, it's too much income, you've got taxes and other kinds of stressors, too little income, you're worried about sales. And I see people in this kind of feast famine all the time of they're reacting to one stressor or another. And then also you have the added component of, now that I actually have a lot of business, I don't want to slow the gas because they still have the feeling of scarcity from when they weren't making as much. And like you said, it's a push pull that a lot of people never find the balance. So
Right.
where
Yeah.
did you, before you did all this research, which is fantastic,
Yeah.
what did it take for you to define balance in finance for you and with your wife and for your family?
Yeah. So then it came for full circle actually with what do we value most?
Mhm.
Priorities. So once we come to this conclusion of like, okay, shared values, what do we value together? Like it literally took me this long. I
Okay, so
did.
you went through this
Yeah,
journey in
I had to
society
go
and
through
then came
this.
back to yourself. I love
Yes. I was like,
it.
wow, honey, so most of my answers in life is like, I've got a problem. Is there a book for that? Like, let me go read what has everybody else already done? I have
Guilty as
loads of
charged.
books. But why recreate the wheel? But as I started looking at all the details and as I put it all together, I realized there were some major gaps, and
Mhm.
so I went back in and said, okay, I'm going to apply this now back to financial coaching. And I started coaching couples. And after my wife and I started figuring out what are our priorities, what are our number one, two, three, and really prioritizing our shared values on money.
Mhm.
Once we were able to get on the same page, And that was the gap that Ramsey was providing. Like, here's how you do it. But, oh, if you're not on the same page, like I could give you $1 for every time that I heard him say, sorry, I can't help you. You're a couple, you need counseling or whatever. That's what I wanted to help. I wanted to help that gap. And because my wife and I were struggling there too. And I saw my parents struggle there too. And so I put all of these things together. Like, it wasn't just one thing. You're right. It wasn't like this linear. It was like boom, 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 all over the place. So then we created a structure that looked at what are our financial priorities and where's where's our line? Like, how far do we go down and say, okay, that's it? Because what a lot of people do is they'll buy on emotion and they'll say they have a financial plan or they have a budget, but they don't stick to it because of their emotions, because of the stress in the moment, because their kids really beg for something, or they want that vacation that they can't afford, like all of those things. But if you boil it down to basically needs and wants, and you say, this is how much money we have, or we have smoothed because we're business owners, this is how much we're going to pay ourselves. Well, then you know what you're going to buy. And you know, you're going to start at the top and you're going to fund from the top to the bottom. It's just logic. But most of us don't think logically. It sounds so insane. We're emotional creatures. And so we tend to just do what we have been taught, what we've been trained, and what our instincts tell us to do, because we don't have a plan for that. And so after my wife and I became really good at this, like we paid off literally tens of thousands of dollars of debt. We became debt free, and we have done, up and down, we're not perfect at this, but we've done so much better of staying true to what our shared value priorities are in money. It's not a stressor anymore like it used to be.
Yeah.
It is a strength of ours. And now we have a good probably 10 to 12 years of solid track record. I call it our financial history, that we can look back and go, remember when it was this tight? Remember when we were here? And we can look back and see the record that we've tracked through budgeting softwares and Excel spreadsheets and go, wow, we really have been able to take care of our money situation so much better.
Which then frees up the capacity to do the things that are important to you, because you're looking at, if most important to you is your kids and having these experiences where you get to travel together and see the world, which I happen to know you. So I happen to know what's on your priorities. You know how to build a business that lets you get away for 16 weeks, I think is what you do every year.
That's the goal every year, is try to get away close to 4 months, and not all at the same time, but yeah, you're exactly right. When you have that freedom and you don't have the stress, it allows me to say, yeah, I take Fridays off. I take 16 weeks off and we go travel the world with our kids and with my wife, and, do trainings or public speak, whatever it is that we're doing as we're traveling around, and we homeschool our kids. So we have a little more flexibility. Now it becomes a time thing. That's where time started to become a huge component. Is now that when money is not the problem or the obsession or the compulsion, now you can say, well, I've got control over that. Let's control the time that we're spending at work. Let's look where the money is coming from, and what are the most important things at work to make us super productive, so I can spend less time doing work. I love it. I love my job. I love helping other people, but I love that when I come home, my kids are excited that I'm there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what counts the most. So lightning round. Are you ready for the lightning
I'm ready.
round?
I'm ready.
So you've kind of gotten to the heart of, so in order to create some of this, you have to scale your business to a degree. And how do you do that without getting stuck in this trap of, if I do more, I'll just accelerate it, and then eventually the money will come back to me. But at some point you kind of lose sight of that. So you've created this lift model. Give us just a super quick elevator version of what that model is.
Yeah. So if you want to follow, the zigzag squirrely path,
the best kind, by the way, the best kind.
It's all over the place. It's like, how did I package this? I just created the lift model. L, live your values. So as an individual, before you share this with your, spouse and family, what are your values? And this came from my father's experience of me writing his obituary. If you had to write yours, this is the model. This is how the practice goes. how would you write that about you? And not focus on, what it is you did or the legacy, but who you become through that process.
Mhm.
What is it that you really could say about yourself, or what others would say about you as your characteristics? Are you loyal? Are you successful? Like, focus on those characteristics. Once you have those, then two is is the ideal calendar in Lyft. Ideal calendar. Now, this is the time. This is where you can say, okay, now I have time flexibility. So where do I put my time? And it doesn't matter if you're working at a W-2 job position where you have salary or 40 hours of work, whatever it is that you're doing, or you're the business owner, you still have control over your time, because we have 168 hours a week. We get to decide. That's equality. We all have that. How we use it and what station we come from, that's a whole other topic. But we can say, in our situation, how do we use these 168 hours? And I have 10 areas of life that I say, hey, you decide, what are your priorities? Where would you prioritize your time and how much time? So track it and then schedule an ideal calendar. The third one is family support. And this is crucial, because those personal developers out there are trying to read every book like I did and work through it on my own so my family wouldn't have to suffer. The reality is, once I open up to my family, like, hey, this is my ideal calendar. I want to live this. I want to be with you. And I want to go on daddy dates and vacations, and take my wife on dates and take her on vacations. And you guys, we all have to be in on this together. And they have their own ideal calendars that we actually set down once a week, and we go through our ideal calendars. There's, we have 7 children. There's no way in the world we'd be able to operate if we didn't actually say, hey, this is what we're doing every day. This is how we're operating. We've been doing this for over a decade, and it's saved our lives, literally has saved our lives. We'd go crazy. And it doesn't matter how many children you have. You don't, have to have a quiver full, but regardless, it's important to have this family support for you to be like, well, dad, you're going to come home at 3:00 today, because we're going to go, mountain biking, or we're going to go to get ice cream, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Man, I don't want to break that. I don't want to break that promise to my child, who I've committed to be there with them. It gives boundaries to our ideal calendar, so that
Mhm.
I don't become a productive workaholic and just work all day and make lots
Yeah.
of money,
It's
right?
easy to do. It's easy
It's
to
easy to do. That's
do.
where you get sucked into the trap. So the
Mhm.
family support is absolutely crucial. And quite honestly, if we don't look at this as an addiction, we don't, why do we need family support? It- Because look at any addict. If they go away to a treatment facility and they come back, right back to where they were, and nothing has changed in the home or their friends or their community or their lifestyle, they'll go right back to where they were. It's been proven. The recidivism rates from these institutions are extremely high. Look at our prison system. Like, I could go on and on and on and on. It doesn't matter. If we don't treat it like an addiction that needs a support system, that we'll miss it. We'll get started, we'll make progress, and then we'll fall right back. The last piece really is, as if you have a partner or a spouse, you need to work as a team. You need to work as a team together. This comes back to the financial piece. It comes back to the time piece, but it also comes down to, are you going to help your children to not be workaholics? Who's talking about that? Who's talking about, well, I'm going to give my children an ideal calendar and teach them how to be balanced young children, so they don't grow up thinking they have to be a workaholic in order to make it. Because I think that's where a lot of,
Mhm.
the ideology in society is. But if you want to change society, you change the family. You change the
Mhm.
family by being great team mates with each other as parents, and then you can teach the children. So that's the Lift
That's
model,
amazing.
LIFT. It works. It's been helping myself for a long time, and our clients literally for years and years
I
to be able to
I
do
just want to be a fly on the wall with your 7 kids and the 2 of you comparing calendars. I mean, I swear, guys, right? I can't be the only one
I'll
who
throw
wants to
my
see that in
GoPro in the corner
action.
next time.
I
It's
love it. I
crazy.
love it.
We got it down to about, 45 minutes to an hour. Not bad. It's well,
Not bad for 7 kids. Like, but I want to go
yes.
this day and this day, and we're gonna do
Yes. But
it.
we focus on goals too. It's not just time. Like, hey, how can I help support you in, your goal and our family goal, and very, very goal oriented, which is balance, right? How do we help
Mhm.
each other? So
Yeah, that's amazing. All right. So now comes the fun part where I get to, you've already kind of summarized your methodology so well, but I want to talk about your journey and the journey you went on. And so one of the first things I heard actually is close to your L in your lift model. And that's, if you died tomorrow, are you living the life that you want to live now? That's the first step, that kind of moment. And people can have that moment without losing somebody. So I think what I've really heard under the covers of what you were saying is, don't wait until you lose someone or go through this experience. You actually can pause now and ask yourself, if you were to die tomorrow, and I know that seems dark, but I've done it before,
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
life that I'm living right now the life that I would be okay with? It helps a lot to just ground yourself around what's important. So that's what I heard first.
Love it.
Uh, Next thing I heard is that you really found your triggers, like it's stress. And more specifically, as you dug underneath it, financial stress, that no matter whether things were great or bad, there was always some sort of financial need associated to it that you were chasing. And so the chasing never stopped, because no matter whether things are going good or bad, you're still running after it. So
That's
really
right.
getting clear on that financial stress as being the core of what was driving a lot of this. Then from there, I heard underneath that is that in order to resolve the financial stress, you actually had to go deeper and figure out what was important to you. So you could set priorities. And instead of running, constantly chasing these financial things, instead you were focusing on, how can I use the financial resources available to me and the time available to me in order to enable these important priorities in my life? And it became a much clearer path to what success looks like. And you were able to set up boundaries and stop when you're done.
That's right.
That's why you had to have both the time and money component, which you have in your lift model as well. And then in there, I actually skipped a step. So if we kind of backtrack to the moment where you realize you need to change, I love the step you put in there, feel your body. There's a lot that goes on in life, but a lot of times when people have these moments, there is a bit of a, let's pause and let's get back into our body and our life before we try to solve these big esoteric problems, because we actually need full capacity and access to ourselves in order to move that forward. So I love that you kind of embedded that in there. So I'll maybe put that put that in as
Well
well.
done. Well done.
And then ultimately it's backing it up. It's doing the work and bringing in, you're making your whole family a part of the process, so that you have all this track record over time to be able to look back on and trust that even though you don't know what life's going to throw at you, you know that you have the tools to navigate it. How was that for a summary? Of course, you made it easy with your lift model, but
You're a pro. Like this is exceptional. I love seeing it in this form, because you know, because we know each other a little bit from some training we've been involved in,
Mhm.
it's public speaking, but it getting the message out, just getting the message out, like you pulling that out of me is very helpful, because it's here a lot. And in my next book, I'm going to focus more on the financial piece of it. My first
Mhm.
book, Achieving Balance, talked more about the time aspect, which is a resource. It is our greatest resource. But the
Mhm.
money part, I'm going to go take a deeper look into how the financial stress really causes all of this in the first place. So I really appreciate you bringing this up, and you hit all the pieces, even the slight little pieces, like feeling in your body. Because you're right, like I could write a book just about the 2 months, the 2 years after dad died, about grief. But I have others who have done much better job on that. But yeah, feeling where you're at, so you're not trying to make life changes in that moment, crucial. So thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, thank you. Well, do you have any final words of wisdom for folks listening?
My only word of wisdom is exactly what you said earlier about, you don't have to have a life changing event to make change. Unfortunately, it's what typically brings us to change.
Look at
But
us.
look at us.
Both of
But
us had that. Yeah.
yeah, but in my book, Achieving Balance, I actually have one of the very first things you do is, this is how you write your own mini obituary. And
Mm.
that step alone, I've had clients who said, that's exactly what I needed. That's maybe all they needed. Maybe they have the other components to be productive and they have boundaries and ideal counter, fine. But if you don't have the internal motivation to make long-term change, it's like a diet to a lifestyle change. You'll just bang around to different books and tips and tricks and hacks, but until you really know what your values are, you won't have that internal motivation to make the change.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very powerful. And for those of you who are not writers and don't like things quite as bulleted and organized, you can also visualize your funeral. Think about who would be
Yeah.
there, what songs would be playing, like get in your body a little bit more, experience it. But there's so many ways to get at this exercise, but it is so important. We are often are avoid the idea of death, but actually the more we think about it, the less scary it is. So thank you so
Love it.
much for your wisdom, Travis. You are an amazing human
Oh,
being, and I'm so excited to have you on. And thank you, everybody.